This is a Rogue Media Network podcast. This is Central Texas Life with Ann Harder.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Central Texas Life. And what a joy for me to have Shea Rial here with me. Shea is a longtime friend. From back in my early days with KXXV,
right.
Back in the late 90s. Mm-hmm. You were our morning meteorologist.
At that time, the day you came on the staff, as a matter of fact.
Okay. So, yeah, you remember. And we... of course, our work days were separate because you did mornings and I was evening anchor. But there were some memorable times that you kind of morphed into the evening
There certainly
hours.
were, and I just have to say too, how are you? It's like you left TV and you got a better set. Nobody does that.
You remember that set?
Yes, I do. This is great. You can see the whole city from above.
I know. Isn't this amazing? And of course, last year you came into town.
Right.
Of course, you live in Tupelo, Mississippi.
That's right.
So, you don't come to Texas that often, but you were here last year, and I brought you up here and to show you the podcast studio here at Rogue Media. And I said, well, next year we'll sit down. So
and here we are.
Here we are. And same reason that brought you to town last year. And of all things, you are helping a friend who has a business that decorates houses for Christmas.
Yeah, it's like most of the year it's landscaping, and then they switch over. And then they work with clients, because then landscaping kind of slows down in the fall.
Sure.
As everybody knows, the mowing stops. You get the freezes in plants, and you wait until spring till it comes back. So then they fill the time by helping people bring a little joy into their lives for Christmas.
Which is some major work, though. I mean, these are big houses that are decking the halls.
Right, and don't get me wrong, I'm not the one designing this, by the way.
Yeah, you're worker bee.
Yeah, I'm just doing the work, but it's fun to do.
How fun! I mean, put me on staff, and next time he has an opening, because that really would be fun. Although I should be decorating my own house, truth be known. But let's back up.
Okay.
So you're still at Channel 25, and I remember a very major news day. It was May 27th.
Of 1997.
1997. And our chief meteorologist was off that day.
That's right.
He shouldn't have been, but he was.
Right.
And so you had worked that morning, done your due diligence, and the Jarell Tornado happened.
Yes, and what's so interesting about that, if we step back into the weather, just kind of picture it a little bit, it wasn't starting out to be some really, really extraordinary severe weather day. I mean, I hate to say that any severe weather day is run-of-the-mill because they can all be disastrous, but you have a lot of those days in this part of the world. So we went into the day knowing, okay, we're going to have some severe thunderstorms. We did not know that by the middle of the day, this giant cloud was going to develop, and out of that would be a storm that moved the wrong direction, that was going to produce the strongest tornado of 1997, and that it was going to happen in our backyard, and that it was going to kill 27 people in Jarell, Texas, not to mention all of the others who were injured and people who suffered property damage as a result of other tornadoes, places like Falls County, Bruceville Eddy. It was a series of storms that eventually made its way into the north side of Austin before the impacts really started to die down. It was a rough day.
I remember getting ready for work that day, and had the TV on just to kind of see, if there's anything happening. And that's when we were beginning to see. Of course, I did have it on Channel 6 because they literally opened their back door and stuck their camera out, and you could see that thing.
They were well placed. For those who don't remember, now they're in downtown Temple. Back then, they were right on I-35 at Bruceville Eddy.
In Eddy, yeah.
And that's where it started.
It was a monster. It was a monster. And so anyway, we knew, going in from the news angle, we knew we were going to have a major news story on our hands. But you were there in weather. You'd already worked all morning, and then I thought, Shea is just running on fumes.
Well, what's interesting, and this is another thing that's changed about TV weather since the 1990s, and it's not changed everywhere. In more studios, they're now putting windows. And I know that sounds like a strange thing to those of you who might be listening or watching, but generally television studios are closed up.
Oh, yeah, ours was. There was
right. You have
not
to go somewhere else in the building
or
to
walk
look out.
outside to see.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what happened. Before I was about ready to leave, just after 12 o'clock, I thought, okay, let's go, just take a look outside because there was nothing on the radar. And I walked outside, facing generally toward the west and southwest, and it looked like a UFO mothership. I don't know how else to say
Right.
it.
No, I have seen that kind of
One
cloud
of the
formation.
biggest clouds, and it's like, I don't know what's going to happen, but something is about to happen. And I
Yeah.
remember going back into the station to the control room going, you've got to get a camera set up. And in the time that it took them to get the staff in the chairs, get the camera, me in front of the camera, the shot set, we were under a tornado warning.
Yeah.
That's just a matter of a few minutes, and then we were off and running for the next several hours.
Oh, it was hours, and I remember at the time, of course, Jarell, some miles away from Waco, and getting crews there and all that sort of thing. But we were just hearing all kinds of horrific stories of the damage and the casualties.
It was a long time, personally, before I was able to go to Jarell, because I think, and of course the stories about all of these people who had their lives torn apart or their lives taken, but I think it's fair to say that people who are in that line of work as a meteorologist, we feel responsible for what,
Yeah.
even though we don't control it, we feel a sense of responsibility to the community. And after all that happened, it really hurt. I hurt for those people. I still
Yeah,
do. I think
yeah.
about them every year on May
I
27th.
know.
And our friend Dr. Don Green, who used to work at Baylor, who worked at Channel 25, about 10 months after, there was a crew that had come down from the sister station in Lawton, Oklahoma. And they were doing a documentary, and he was going to take them down there and kind of escort them around to the places that significant things happen.
He was considered a forensic meteorologist.
Sure.
For that very
was.
reason, too. Yeah.
And he came to me and he said, I think it's time. I think it's time for you to go.
Oh.
And so I went, reluctantly, glad that I did, because I was able to see it firsthand. But even though I knew what had happened, seeing it in person was a whole different thing.
Yeah.
We have all, maybe as children, taken a pair of scissors and a piece of paper and curled it. You know how you do paper curls?
Mm-hmm.
I remember walking out on the slab of a house that had vinyl floor, and the whole floor had been curled like paper curls because of the debris that churned, because the winds were above 260 miles an hour. And the thing was only moving a few miles an hour. It actually sort of got this title called Dead Man Walking, because people could just sit there and sort of, watch it walk across the prairie at speeds where, if I went out walking in the neighborhood and you too, we could walk faster than this thing was moving. So it just churned like a blender.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember one tragic story of a family who were able to get home.
Right.
And they were totally, there was just the slab left. They all were killed. And if they'd stayed where they were, they
Right.
would have survived. But it's one of those things, you get all these tornado tips and what to do.
Right.
It's like find a meeting place and all that. And I'm sure they were thinking, well, this is what, we need to get together.
They
and
did
get
what
to
they
the
were
house.
supposed to do. And
Yeah.
it was that tiny little bit of a percentage of a chance and possibility that came true, which was the plan didn't work. You're right. They would have been better off staying where they were, but nobody knows that.
No.
Typically we think of tornadoes coming in generally from the southwest and moving to the northeast.
Right, correct.
Here, we moved it from the northeast to the southwest. So somebody watching it from the southwest would look and say, oh, that's moving away from me. And it was going so slowly, but no, in fact, it was headed straight for them. And we had Doppler radar, which we used. And of course, it's a lot more advanced since then, but still, the hardest thing to predict is something that has absolutely never happened.
Yeah.
And that was one of those events that falls in that very small percentage of storms of an exceptionally rare occurrence. And so you just go through it. And I've always felt so bad for that community. I do
Yeah.
have to say, though, when I was back here in Texas last year, which you mentioned, I went to Jarell.
Did you?
And just took a look around, and they have a really touching, beautiful memorial in one of the city parks there. And so if you are familiar with the Jarell Tornado and have a connection to it, I really recommend that you take the little detour off of I-35, go into town. find the park, see the memorial. It's very well done.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting in that, kind of post-tornado period, that just the geography of that area sort of made Jarell more prone. Is there was something to that?
Well, in the sense that you have these wide open spaces where this thing can move unimpeded. There's literally nothing to stop it. But there were certain other extreme things that ended up being found. And not to get too graphic, but, since we're discussing the details a bit, some of this involved things like livestock. And there were livestock that they found dead in fields just pierced by hundreds of blades of grass.
Just grass?
Grass, because if it's flying at 300 miles an hour and it comes through your body.
It's like a needle. Yeah.
It's like a needle. Or limbs removed, heads removed. How about this? They found 6 automobiles that private citizens owned. There were literally automobiles that were never found again after the tornado because they got sucked up into the tornado and the parts were churned to the point that wherever it was they dropped out, it was no longer a car.
It was parts.
So it literally just vanished off the face of the earth.
Well, we are in Tornado Alley. I mean, and severe weather is always a thing, and it's something that, I'm grateful to our meteorologist every day because you do perform that service. I'd have speak to groups, and I go, what's the best thing about your job? And I said, well, it's always great to inform people.
Sure.
Have, do all the things that news people do. I said, but the most important thing we do is weather, because you can die from it.
You can die from it, and of course tornadoes aren't the most deadly. You see
flooding.
People. That's right. We've seen in recent weeks hurricanes Francine and especially Milton say, okay, how much flooding disaster did you expect from a hurricane to happen in the mountains? And then there we go.
I think
you look at Western
was the
North
surprise
Carolina.
factor in that. I think people were really stunned at the gravity of that.
I remember my cousin, who also lives in Mississippi, she said, well, what do you think that Hurricane Milton is going to do? And I said, I think when all is said and done, the story is going to be the flooding, not at the coast. Because, think about it a second. If you have a tall mountain and you drop 20 or 30 inches, somebody in a valley is going to have a really bad day.
Yeah.
And that's not to make light of it, but that's exactly what happened over a huge geographic area. In Western North Carolina. It's so beautiful. I feel so bad for them and all of those places that have been through these disasters.
Yeah. Well, it was a tragic story, but something, that we all have to be aware of. We always need to be weather aware. And if they break into your favorite show with a severe thunderstorm warning or a tornado warning, and it may be blue skies where you are.
That's right.
But somebody's grandmother may be under the gun. So
that's right. Well, you think about Central Texas, and the television stations here cover from west to east, roughly an area, say, from Gulfweight and San Saba all the way over to Madisonville, Corsicana, north to south. It's Hillsborough all the way down to Georgetown, College Station, Burnett. And so it's a very huge geographic area, and it really might not be happening where an individual is, but somebody is being affected. I have to say, though, I do hope that eventually we figure out this digital television thing enough to where maybe if people just for whatever reason don't want to see coverage, they can opt back into their regular programming or they can opt out of the programming to go to the coverage. But the most important thing is public safety.
Right.
Like you said, so don't get too upset at your local weather people because they're really trying to help the whole community.
But for you, you've been out of the weather business for a while.
Yeah, I think that people who become meteorologists never really stop being
Obviously, you're
meteorologists. You may not do that for your work, and you may do it again someday for your work. But I think that the cycle of television, for me, it ran its course at a certain point in time. You never know. Things come back. I'm always open, but it's like I work in market research now.
Yeah, tell me about that. So,
well, it's interesting looking at how consumers behave, how customer service works. I mean, these are not terribly complicated topics, but I think behavioral economics as a study is really fascinating. And behavioral economics is a field that's growing. Not necessarily a lot of people have heard that title, but you may have heard of a title of a book and a podcast that's called Freakonomics.
Oh, yes.
Right?
Absolutely.
So that he was a behavioral economist, and they began this whole thing as basically looking at how people make decisions, not just about money, but it translates into their everyday lives. Everything from how do you go, like a good example would be, why is it that we believe that if we go to the store and we pay $2 that we're going to get a gazillion dollars in return, but yet someone may offer us some other type of statistic and say, well, you have a 1 in 4 chance of that happening, and they turn around and say, that's not much of a chance, and totally blow it. That's the field that behavioral economics gets into, and people who do market and market research can tap into that to help improve business.
Yeah.
So
So how do you go about that? Do you do surveys, a telephone? Is it a little
No,
of
I don't do
everything?
telephone. I mean, there are people who do that type of stuff, and there are all sorts of big market research firms. And so I do contracting work for several of them.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, that's great. And
Yeah.
it's just it's always fun to get back in touch with you. Of course, you've been in Tupelo for how long?
Almost 15 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the reason is family.
Yeah.
You know, it's family. Family's so important. And so it's like my mom still lives in Tupelo, and I have extended family there too. But at the same time, having lived in Georgia, Arkansas, and different places in Texas, including here, and having gone to Texas A&M and grown up in El Paso, I feel like I have a lot of hometowns.
Yes, you do.
You know,
Yeah.
it's wonderful to come back. This feels like I left home on Monday, but I came back home yesterday once I got here.
Yeah, yeah. So how long is your visit? How long?
I'm going to be here till Thanksgiving, so I've
Yeah.
got time.
Yeah.
And that's the nice part with doing the work with my friends, is having the opportunity to be able to sightsee and it not all be crammed into one day
Yeah.
or 2 days. You know, you can actually come and kind of breathe and live a little bit and relax, and it's wonderful.
That's great, and enjoy the great state of Texas.
That's right.
Well, we're here, but one thing that for you and I love the Natchez Trace Parkway,
Yes.
which goes where from Natchez.
It goes from Natchez to just outside
To-
of Nashville, Tennessee.
outside of it's what
444
miles.
miles. Yeah.
And I was always on my bucket list to go at least for a little while
Sure.
on the Natchez Trace, and was able to do that. And so just periodically, you'll get on the trace and put some music behind it, and just kind of drive.
I sent her
And
these
send me a
videos.
video.
You have to have gotten 30 or 40 of them. And
Yeah.
I'm kind of like, has she seen this stretch before? Has she not? But so much of it, if you can imagine, the Natchez Trace with this 444-mile uninterrupted road, by the way, because
Yeah.
it's part of the National
But it's
Park
like a
Service.
park.
Yeah,
It's like
part of
being
the
in a park.
Service.
And the speed limit is what, 50?
50.
You cannot speed. You're going to just take your time and enjoy nature.
That's right. And so you get some impatient drivers and things, but
Yeah.
but generally speaking, everybody does very well on the trace, and you see people out there riding bikes or motorcycles. I mean, you know, it's a recreation place, and there's picnic tables here and there, and you know, you just enjoy the view. And especially coming into the fall, we're going to be moving into the fall foliage season
yes.
next, so I won't be home for that this year.
Oh, you're going to miss.
I'll miss the foliage, but I am going to say, as dry as it's been all across the southern United States, I'm not convinced that the foliage season is going to be that great
Be
this
that
year.
good this year.
You know, maybe some rain comes in the next week or two, and maybe you pull out some color. But I was already sort of seeing, before I left Mississippi earlier this week, a lot of leaves dropping off, just kind of turning brown.
Just
maybe
turning
a little
brown.
yellow here and there, but
Yeah. Yeah, of course, you know, where your neck of the woods in the spring, you get the beautiful dogwoods, and
just everything.
everything is so pretty.
Right, and you just make sure you stock up on your allergy medicine and, and go outside and take in the view, because it'll try to pollinate you while you're looking at it too.
That is true. Well, you know, it's just a great part of the country, and it's fun to enjoy it vicariously through.
Well, I
through
love
what
sharing
you
it
send
with
me.
you too.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I love to end these visits with a little questionnaire. It's similar
Okay.
to the one the late great James Lipton used on Inside the Actor's Studio.
Oh, I know the questionnaire.
Okay, so this is my take on it.
Okay.
So, what is your favorite word, Shea Rial?
Oh gosh. See, I should have anticipated that you would have done this. I should have known better.
Yeah.
Honestly, I think it's love. You know, which
I
is
hear that a lot.
yeah, which is it's simple, but it's not at all simple.
No.
You know,
you're-
because it's
yeah.
not just a noun, it is a verb, and it is a verb you have to work at.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it is a verb you have to learn to receive,
Yeah.
which may be harder than giving sometimes.
Yeah. That's well said. What is your least favorite word?
Well, I don't think that we should say them out loud since you're a family show.
Okay, yeah, right. Don't.
So
If
we'll just say that category of words that shouldn't be said on a
Shouldn't-
family show,
okay.
because a lot of times, I
Right.
mean, I'm not going to sit here and act like I'm the perfect person. That's not what I mean. I don't want to come across like that at all. But I think we know more words than that, and we can choose better words if we want to.
Right,
So-
right. Of course, having worked in broadcasting.
You've probably heard all those
Yeah,
words.
well, yeah, I did, but I always believed if you ever had the opportunity to have a live microphone on you, do not say those words. Just
Yeah.
don't make it a part of your
Yeah.
vernacular. So when something, exciting or some emergency happens,
The reflex.
that's not going to come out.
That's right.
You have to train not to. Anyway, I'm through
Yep,
preaching.
we're giving
now.
you lessons about language, by the way.
through preaching now. But what turns you on creatively, emotionally, or spiritually?
Well, lots of things, actually. I love listening to music. I don't want to say used to be a pianist. I am an inactive pianist.
Yeah,
We'll say
I
that
do.
my mother will see this, and so she's always has hope that I'm going to
Go to
return.
start pick up your
And
piano again.
maybe that will happen. But I mean, I love music. I love photography.
Yeah.
Just things that kind of capture the joy and the beauty,
Mm-hmm.
especially of the natural world, and they bring our blood pressure down
Yeah.
too, because the world can be so tense. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
stuff like
Okay.
that.
Then what turns you off creatively, spiritually, or emotionally?
Negativity.
Yeah.
I don't know. And I'm going to say this. I used to be a person who was really negative at certain points in my life, and I think I was good at hiding it.
Yeah.
But it's like if you get to a point in your life that you start approaching everything from the point of gratitude, even things that are complicated or that seem bad or annoying, and you get in the habit of doing that with stuff that's small, you get to where you can do it with stuff that's big, and then you can start seeing the blessing in the stuff that you've been given, especially if you're patient enough to wait for some time to pass and you look like, oh yeah, that really was good that it worked out
Yeah,
that way.
yeah. Yeah. That's true. What sound do you love the most?
I love to hear my cat purr.
Yeah, that's.
I do. I can get in the
I
floor.
know. I can
and
just hear it now. Yeah.
Yeah, lay
yeah.
down with her, and because I don't like motors. That's what's so funny. And I say hers is the only sound of a motor that I
That
like.
you like, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What sound do you hate?
I hate loud motors. I hate excessively loud music.
Yeah, speaking of motors, yeah.
Hate screaming.
Yeah.
Do we have all day? I could tell you all the noises. Maybe people won't do them anymore if I told them. No,
Well, that'd be
I'm
good.
just kidding.
What other profession would you like to have tried?
I've thought a lot about that. I think that probably there would be a pretty good chance if I rewound the clock. And I'm not one of those who likes to go back and say, let's do it all over. And, I'm just, no, I'm happy with the way my life has gone. But it would probably end up being something involving psychology or sociology, because even as a meteorologist, and then in the years that I worked in supplemental education for a while after that, the key is always unlocking what makes the person tick.
Yeah.
How do I reach you? And we naturally do that with our friends, and that's why we become friends. We have a harder time doing it with our families, which is sort of fascinating considering that they're really our first friends.
Yeah.
But things happen in a family. So I don't know. I think the behavior aspect of people is really fascinating.
Well,
And I
then
think,
you're kind of doing it in your
see,
research job, so yeah.
right.
Yeah. What job do you know you would not want to do, though? No,
Oh
thanks.
gosh, that list is so long. Not to say that I don't want shows like this on TV. I would not want to be a person who, here we go, does autopsies.
Oh, yeah, right.
Wouldn't want to do that. Thank goodness there are people who do it. I
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't want to handle things like sewage and trash because smells can make me very ill. But thank goodness we have people who
Mm-hmm. I
can do
know,
it.
dirty jobs that
Well,
micro.
really, I mean, think about, your building or your office or wherever you go. Like people say, well, who's the most important person in the building? And you'll say, oh, it's the president of the company. No, I say it's the custodian.
Yeah,
The president can stay home, but if nobody cleans the place,
Yeah.
it's a disaster.
Yeah.
So it'd be anything that just involves stuff like that. I can get a little weird with germs sometimes.
Well, one last question. What do you want to hear God say when you arrive at the pearly gates?
You really did the best to do what I wanted you to do. I think that would be it, because I know I'm not perfect. I know I fail. I know I succeed sometimes. I know all of these things. But I do think that this life is preparing us to do something much bigger. And part of that secret, I think it was Betty White that used to call it the secret. Whenever people would pass away, she would go, well, now they know the secret. Because it's the one great thing in life that you do not know until you are no longer alive. And occasionally we get these glimpses. And of course, there are many different types of religions that have information about that, and people who have had what are called near-death experiences.
Yeah.
And that's fascinating.
It is fascinating.
But until it actually happens to each of us, we really don't know the whole story.
Yeah.
And so I'm anxious to see. I mean, not like next week or
That's
something,
right.
but eventually, whenever a reasonable amount of time has passed, I'm anxious to see what's out there next.
Yeah. Oh, well, Shea, thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me.
This has been fun.
It's fun. This actually feels, she's not asking me questions off of a sheet, by the way, but this really kind of feels like our conversation whenever just sitting at a table having a meal or whatever, just chatting, and I love it. And I'm so happy for you that you have been able to find this as a way. I know that many people here have said it to me too. They miss you on TV. They understand why you don't want to do the daily grind anymore. And believe me, I certainly understand that. But I'm glad that you're staying in touch with this community here.
It is a joy. And thank you, Rogue Media. And
Well, they're
Mike
fantastic. Everybody's so
Hamilton and,
nice.
Yeah, Corey
Wonderful.
Dickman, all the great people here at Rogue Media. Josh, who's managing everything for us. I don't normally do credits, but I should start
There
doing
you go.
credits.
Look, you have a screen here, so this is
That's
the part.
right. We need to roll.
Just roll the
roll
credits.
credits to thank
and
all
it'll
the good-
disappear, and the credits will
the
roll.
good people here at Rogue Media. But I appreciate. I'm just so glad we got to do this, Shea. Thank
Me
you.
too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for being with us, and we'll see you next time on Central Texas Life. Bye-bye.
Central Texas Life with Ann Harder is part of the Rogue Media family. Be sure to check out our other shows at roguemedianetwork.com. Please rate this show 5 stars on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, or anywhere you get your podcasts. Join us again soon for more Central Texas Life with Ann Harder. This has been a Rogue Media Network production.